Yo, what's up? It's your favorite neighborhood historian, Dilla. I'm a Chicago historian that lives by the saying that everything dope about America comes from Chicago. Today, we're in beautiful Oak Park, Illinois. It's a majestic suburb that's literally right across the street from the west side of Chicago. I'm here in Oak Park today to talk to my main man, Thomas Lennon. We're going to see if he knows Oak Park, Illinois.
Living in Chicago, God is in your favor. I'ma hold it down like call me an anchor. Think about my problems, deal with it later. Focus on my family and stack up all this paper. I am an emperor, God in the making. Every time I wake up, it's a celebration. Every time I wake up, it's a started from the bottom, y'all. Started from the
Chicago historian Dilla is a fascinating blend of modern historian and cultural worker. Dilla has become a Chicago social media sensation by going viral on TikTok. His 60-second history videos on everything Chicago have been viewed over 20 million times. Dilla has been featured on all manner of Chicago media and has also appeared nationally on both The Today Show and The Kelly Clarkson Show. As a proud resident of the South Side, Dilla lives by the saying that everything dope about America comes from Chicago.
Actor and author Thomas Lennon grew up in Oak Park, Illinois and attended Oak Park River Forest High School. There, his involvement in theater production sparked his interest in acting and comedy. Lennon is best known for his work on shows like Reno 911 and for movies like The Night at the Museum. Brother Thomas, how are you?
Dilla.
You know, some people say they love the environment, but you roll up on a bike.
They're all talk. And what's the temperature?
It's 98 degrees, so I think you certainly love the environment. But
He's got the short socks. He's got a bike helmet. He came on a bike. If I had a yoga mat and a Ruth Bader Ginsburg t-shirt, I would be the most Oak Park thing that ever happened.
There's this thing we do in Chicago when people aren't necessarily in the Chicago proper boundaries and we're like, oh no, that's not Chicago. But right now where we're standing, pick up a rock and throw it and we would hit somebody in Chicago.
So last year I did Wheel of Fortune and I was chatting with Pat Sajak in between. And I'm like, Pat, I'm from Chicago too. And he's like, you're from Chicago? I was like, yeah. He said, you know, every time I talk to somebody and they say they're from Chicago, then they always say they're from some suburb with a tree in the name. So where are you from? And I was like, Oak Park. There's a lot of big debates about things in Oak Park. One is that Hemingway said it was a town of broad lawns and narrow minds. Not true. He never said that about Oak Park, and the lawns aren't that broad. Two, when Hemingway was born here, a lot of people say this was Cicero at the time. This wasn't Oak Park, but I feel like it was Oak Park, and it feels like fighting words around here.
So here in the Chicagoland area, a lot of our neighborhoods and towns used to be their own townships and they were all interconnected. Like for instance, the place that we call Oak Park was formerly a part of the township of Cicero. The men in Cicero did not want the Green Line train extended all the way to Austin and then Harlem because that was going to be taking away business from the township of Cicero. But the women wanted that train extension because it would give them access to the stores in Chicago and also the schools in Chicago. That particular referendum vote was one of the first times in our state that we actually allowed women to have the right to vote for certain municipal ideas. The men, to get them back, they voted to kick Oak Park out of the Cicero Township. So when you think of picturesque suburbs like the beautiful Oak Park is, you don't necessarily think of black dudes moving there from other neighborhoods. But one of the first African Americans to move to Oak Park is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Percy Julian.
Did he help invent something, maybe this was just legend, that led to the invention of the birth control pill?
We know a lot about the history of Oak Park as it relates to Frank Lloyd Wright or Ernest Hemingway, various authors and like you say, musicians, even the likes of yourself. But right now we happen to be standing in front of the home of Dr. Percy Julian. So who is Percy Julian? Well, besides being the first black man to move into the town of Oak Park, he also is one of the first African Americans to receive a PhD in chemistry. It's his work with medicine, synthesizing plants that help us create a thing called progesterone, which is very important to women's health. So Percy Julian has a few schools named in his honor. There's Percy Julian Grade School, which is located in Oak Park, Illinois. And on the south side of Chicago is Percy Julian High School. So being the first to a place sometimes causes you a bit of a headache. Percy Julian, being the first black man in Oak Park, saw his home firebombed. Now, it wasn't firebombed by the residents of Oak Park. What historians think it was firebombed by the residents of Cicero, who didn't like the thought of having a black man so close to their town. But out of that, the residents of Oak Park, they set Shiva and watched his house for 2 weeks to make sure it didn't happen again. He won Chicagoan of the Year in 1949, and he did help lead to what eventually becomes the birth control pill.
I think that's why we all celebrated him a lot. He was a hero he was a hero for the cause. I'm just saying.
Oh my God,
we gotta celebrate.
Beautiful and awesome downtown Oak Park. A lot of history, a lot of small businesses.
There's actually a restaurant just around the corner. On the wall, they've got every famous person from Oak Park, except for one.
Who's that? You? What kind of stuff? Walking downtown Oak Park, stopping and checking out probably what's a landmark that most folks would easily recognize as far as being in Oak Park, the Lake Street Theater. But all this walking has me hungry. So take me somewhere in Oak Park to eat.
Let's do it. And this is the legendary Poor Phil's only bar in Oak Park. I knew that Percy Julian had lived here, but I didn't know any of the story about when he came in, people firebombing his house. I was also surprised there's no plaque there. There's a bunch of plaques and information on Frank Lloyd Wright's house.
So Frank Lloyd Wright is an amazing architect. He's actually the inventor of this thing called the prairie style of architecture. It's known all over the world. He had a bit of a reputation with the ladies, but that ain't got nothing to do with me. There's businesses, buildings, and homes all across the world that have his fingerprints on it. And you should definitely look up the architect, Frank Lloyd Wright.
Frank Lloyd Wright's cousin, Richard Lloyd Jones. He wrote these terribly racist editorials in his newspaper, and it stoked what became the Tulsa Massacre.
I live in Chicago, you're in Chicago. We never even talk about the Chicago race riot either.
I know nothing about it.
The Chicago race riots of 1919 is a pivotal event in our city's history. It happened in July of 1919. A teenager by the name of Eugene Williams, he was floating on a makeshift raft in Lake Michigan, and he incidentally or accidentally crossed an imaginary line that separated the black beachgoers from the white beachgoers. He ended up on the white beach side, and sadly, a World War I veteran started to throw boulders at Eugene Williams in Lake Michigan. One of those boulders hit Eugene in the head. He lost consciousness, and sadly, he drowned and lost his life. On the black side of the beach, the beachgoers were able to rouse and grab the rock thrower. They called the police, but because he was a white man, the police wouldn't arrest him. So then a black cop showed up, and the white cops wouldn't allow him to arrest him neither. And so then a standoff happened on the beach, and sadly, shots were fired into a crowd. 5 African Americans lost their lives that day. So people from the Bridgeport and Canaryville neighborhood, sadly, started to say that blacks were coming back to get retaliation. So folks from those neighborhoods went on the offensive. They started to firebomb homes. And over 25 African Americans were killed, 13 whites were killed, over 600 African Americans were injured. More than 1,000 African Americans lost their homes due to firebombing. The riots went on for 4 or 5 days before finally the National Guard was brought in to quell the riots. Why do you think Oak Park was resistant to getting those dividing lines?
I think it somehow just became a place that takes pride in being progressive.
They say that when you're coming out to Oak Park, you got to exit to the left on the expressway because of how progressive Oak Park is.
That's very correct.
And that's the only expressway
left
exits
exit.
on 290 are the two exits to the left.
I'd never heard that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, special shout out to my brother from another mother, Thomas Lennon. As for me, I might go check out a movie. I don't know. Shout out to people of Oak Park. Shout out to people of Chicago. Till next time.